We're live. Let's switch this around a little bit over here. Tonight we are going to talk about lots of cool things. One, obviously, this graph that we have up, and this is the camshaft comparison that I did on a 5.7 liter LS1. And we're going to talk about some interesting results and why I think on this particular test, looking way back now at the DYNO results, that I think I got this wrong. I think I made a mistake, and we'll get into that. And we'll be talking about what's going on with, this kind of testing, what I have coming up. Lots of cool stuff. So we'll start off tonight with, this was an LS1. This is basically an LS1 crate motor that the guys from West Tech Performance had. So we did a bunch of testing with it. In this case, we did 3 different camshafts. So the blue here, as you can see, the lowest run, not surprisingly, that's the stock horsepower level. So that's what this thing made. It was a LS1 crate motor, so rated at 345 horsepower. We had long tube headers on it. We had no accessories. We had an open throttle body. We ran it with back then we ran it with a fast XFI management system, and you just optimize the air, fuel, and timing, excuse me, and all that stuff. So it worked out really good. So run in that manner. We're at 415 horsepower or so, and actually a very similar amount of torque in this 5.7 liter with the factory LS1 camshaft. And that's important to note because a lot of times when we do these comparisons, especially if we do a lot of 4.8 and 5.3 and early 6.0 stuff, we will compare it to the LM7, LR4, early 6 liter LQ4 camshaft, which that is the mildest camshaft of the LS engine family. And it's a lot easier to get bigger gains. In fact, if you take a look at the video I have up, comparing all of the camshafts, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up the chats over here, see what you guys are doing. If you take a look and we do the comparison with the stock 5.3 liter LM7 camshaft, we see huge power gains from camshafts. But if you look at that video that I did where we compared all the stock cams, the LM7, LR4 camshaft, and then the LS1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 12, whatever, and you can see that even the factory LS1 camshaft is a fairly sizable power gain over the factory LM7 5.3 liter truck cam. Not surprisingly, they would use different cams in those because they're trying for different things. One of them is to enhance low-speed power, which the LM7 cam does compared to the LS1. The LS1 cam loses power down low compared to the factory 5.3 liter and 4.8 liter camshaft. And so when we're seeing this comparison, we're seeing gains, and you probably don't see the same kind of gains that we're used to seeing when we run the comparison tests. I'm going to go ahead and move this over a little bit. When we see the comparison tests between the 5.3 liter cam and regular aftermarket cams. So a lot of times we don't get as much, and the reason for that is we're already at a higher starting point with the factory LS1. Same thing goes for the factory LS2 camshaft, the LS3, LS6, all of those are going to be, and the LS9 obviously as well, all of those make a lot more power than a factory 5.3 liter LM7 camshaft or 4.8 liter LR4 camshaft. So this was our camshaft comparison. We ran 2 different camshafts on it. I'm going to make sure I got the specs here correct on this. Both of them are from Lunati. One of them was a Voodoo cam. One of them was a 212, 218 at 50. And oddly enough, that's the red line. So that's the one that made the most power. That was a 531 lift, 113 degree lobe separation angle, and as I said, 212, 218, fairly mild, kind of like a stage 2 truck cam, if you will, or the. I think that if we take a look back, I think maybe the comp 265 cam was very comparable to this as well. The other one is actually a 212, 221 F50. And it's a 530, 549 lift, 114 LSA. Again, all fairly normal specs. But the interesting thing is, and having done lots and lots of camshaft testing, both before and during and after I ran this test, I would certainly expect that a camshaft that's 212, 221 to make more power than the camshaft that was 212, 218. The lift numbers are comparable enough, 530 versus 531, and the bigger duration camshaft had 549 lift on the exhaust side. So all of those things would lend me to believe that at the very least it would make more power somewhere at the top of the RPM range if we had some kind of trade-off. But oddly enough, that camshaft, which we see here in the green line, made less power up until the very top, up until essentially 61 or 6200 RPM. It made less power, and I would not expect that to happen. And I haven't gone back and run this test because of, you don't, sometimes you look at this stuff 10 years later or whatever and go, yeah, we ran this test and it did this, and you're like, yeah, but you know what, honestly, that doesn't really make sense. And I come across this stuff on occasion when I go back through and look at the notes and look at the testing, and a lot of this, I remember doing this test and I remember thinking that this was odd that camshaft didn't do well, but we just we just continued on with our business, because this is part of the video that I'm working on now that we're going to do a whole thing on. And we ran a number of other things. We probably ran, I don't know, 7 or 8 different direct back-to-back tests on this, including the camshaft. So we ran throttle bodies and headers and all kinds of stuff. And I had a lot of testing that I had to get done on this LS1, and we had the available dyno time, and so I just went through and started making the changes. And I thought that this was, and looking back now, I think that this is really, really interesting, and it makes me want to redo this test, because I don't know if, I don't think that this is accurate, so I can't say for sure. I can't say for sure unless I go back and redo it, because I'm not totally comfortable that that's the way that this thing should have worked out. Now, the other thing I don't know about, I only have the lift duration and LSA numbers. I don't remember having cam cards on these to see what the opening and closing points and all that, so I could really get, maybe get a better picture of what was going on. But it just makes me think that something was off when we ran this, the bigger Lenati cam compared to the Voodoo cam. It could have been a ramp rate thing. I'm just not sure. And like I said, I don't like not being 100% sure when we run a test like this. One thing we know for sure is the little 212, 218 camshaft, as you would expect, as stage 2 kind of truck cam, made more power everywhere than the factory LS1 camshaft. Pretty easy to beat factory things. We were up from 415 to 445 or something. We picked up about 30 horsepower from the camshaft. The nice thing about that camshaft is it picked up power everywhere, even down low, even down as low as 3,000 RPM. Again, a lot easier to pick up low-speed power compared to the LS1 camshaft than it is compared to the truck camshaft, because that's where the little truck camshaft excels. Very easy to pick up lots on the big end compared to the truck cam, but not as easy to do it on the bottom. And I had an interesting conversation with Brian Tooley today, and we were talking about VVT on Gen 5 motors versus Gen 4 motors, and because he had such good luck with the camshafts, and we're going to be doing some stuff on the Gen 5 L83 stuff coming up, and he had such good luck with doing those camshafts, and that they tried applying it to and we're going to go over this in interviews and stuff, but on the Gen 4 stuff, he just didn't have the same kind of gains. He tried a bunch of different camshafts, tried VVT stuff for the Gen 4 camshafts, and they just didn't show all of the gains that he got from doing the same thing with the Gen 5 stuff. So I thought it was interesting. I was really hoping that we could get I'm always thinking about the guys that are asking for more torque. So if they put a 6-liter together, we put some sort of smallish kind of camshaft in there, and that get good power, you can get gains on the top. And so I want to see what's going to happen with VVT. So I'm hoping we could get, good power down low, especially after seeing how well the L83 did in comparison to Gen 3 and Gen 4 5.3s. It just made so much more power basically everywhere. So we wanted that for the earlier LS things, and right now it seems like that's probably not going to happen, and that there aren't really big gains even down low compared to, for instance, the Truck Norris cam or the torque cam maybe. So there's more testing that's going to happen, and that will be all interesting. I'm working on one for the Truck Norris cam. And naturally, we eventually want to run that with boost too. I kind of know going in what's going to happen, that it is definitely going to make a lot more power under boost, and it's going to work well. We already know because any starting point that you start at, we just raise the boost up and make more power, and that's how those camshafts work. So let's find out what you guys got going on. Hey Richard, there's too much empty space on the screen. Can you enlarge it? Yeah, I can. Let's see if we can make that bigger. How's that? Oh, I lost my. I gotta bring back my chat. How's that? Is that better? Let's see. Have you dynoed the truck Norris cam yet? No, not yet. I just got mine to go into a 2008 LY6 6-liter, and I'm going to carburet it. It has rectangular ports on it. None of that is going to be a problem. As we've shown many, many times, whatever camshaft you put in there, whether it has rec port heads or cathedral port heads, it's going to work just fine with all those cams. You said it's blurry, Noodles? Let me see. I'm not showing it's blurry on the feed here. Yeah, get the likes up. Mine was blurry, got off the Wi-Fi, it got better at 720. Okay, I don't know where that's set up at. I might need to do the setup on this end. Picture is better, your mic is really hot. Oh, okay, let's see if I can. I'll have to adjust that. Ah. Okay, let's see. No, we don't want to mute it. Okay. Matthew, for those who are blurry, click the dots on the screen, select quality, select advanced, select 720, and then apparently all of the wrongs will be righted. I can turn down the mic. I'll have to do that later. Everybody's clear. It's all fine up in Canada. I'm really surprised at this cam test. Really surprised about that 221 cam. Andy, will an electronic boost controller reduce lag versus running on the spring on a street-driven engine? As I showed in that video, the electronic boost controller will improve boost response in the area that is being controlled by the wastegate. It's not going to help a turbo come up anymore to the point where it's at the wastegate. So if it goes from 0 PSI, let's say you have your controller set at 10 PSI, it's not going to help that spool up at all, except right at the very end, as we showed, because with just running on the spring, your wastegate starts to open early. It'll start to open it before whatever the spring rate is, and in that area right there, you're going to get some boost and power gains because it's going to hold it closed all the way, and so it's going to make it ramp up a lot quicker. But down in the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 PSI, it's not, all of that is just basically exhaust energy that's getting to the turbo. I'm wondering if the engine just dealt with it because carbs don't come in different throat lengths. No, but you can put stack lengths on carburetors like we did with Weber's for a long time. And if there's really anything to find in runner length, there's always something to find in runner length. Whether it's a carburetor or EFI, it doesn't matter. Runner length always does the same thing. It's cold in Canada, -25. That is pretty chilly. Which cam is the red line? The red line is the 212-218 cam. 221 is the green line. 212, 221. It's green. Have you done EFI versus carb dynos? Many, many times. Like throttle elbow on the same side? Yes. As a matter of fact, we did that on this motor. I ran a single plane intake with a carburetor. It was also an EFI intake manifold because it was a GM Cathedral Port single plane intake manifold that also had provisions for EFI. We ran it carbureted, then I put an elbow on it, and with EFI, and you'll see in the video, it made less power because that's what they do. Because you have the port injection down at the port by the head. And with the carburation, you have fuel being injected into the common plenum, and you get charge cooling, and it makes more power. You want to see tunability for the dips and the dyno curves. That's not tuning. That's manifold design. That has nothing to do with air fuel and timing. Electronic boost control can be used for traction management. That's true, which can be very critical on the drag strip or out of the corner in a circuit, especially if your control system is sophisticated enough to do like in gear, so that you can have different boost curves and you can have it ramp up differently in different gears, because obviously a lot of times in first gear you don't need 30 pounds of boost. David, how much compression would it take to make 520 foot-pounds from a 376 525? What else would you do to increase torque? I've done LS3 motors that have made near that. It takes the right. An LS3 already has fairly good compression, but more would certainly help. I think we did it with. It's a fairly good-sized camshaft too. Like that 231, 247 cam, the torque that you get is the peak torque anyway. Usually takes a fairly good sized camshaft, but a long runner intake definitely helps. And I think that we've been in the 515 to 518 foot-pound range. Yeah, DFA, I agree. He said, wow, the green one is the 220. It's not 221, it's 212, 221. So they're both 212 on the intake. One of them is 212, 218. One of them is 212, 221. And so I didn't expect the 212, 221 to be down everywhere like that. Any idea when the Trek Norris will happen? I'm waiting for the data from Brian right now. As soon as I get that, I can do the video. Cameron, the power graph is what's on the screen. You're in the box. I know I'm in a small box because nobody wants to look at me, so that's why I figured it'd be much better just to see the dyno stuff. Ross, did I miss the rudder length conversation? I'm the dude putting a TVS 1320 on top of a Trailblazer SS intake manifold. That's awesome. I'm interested about the structure of the Trailblazer SS when you're trying to mount that, but it will be very cool, and I salute anybody doing crazy stuff like that. Runner length with any kind of boost always helps. The runner length is still the runner length, and it'll still basically gives you the starting power curve with the runner length, and then you just add boost on top of that. Doesn't matter what you're supplying it with. A roots blower, a twin screw, a centrifugal turbo, whatever. Have you tried an electronic supercharger on the dyno before? Might be able to modulate it to produce a turbo-like dyno curve without the extra weight. No, I've never seen an electronic supercharger that has a big enough electric motor that will support a big enough supercharger to make reasonable power. Because if you have 100, 200, 300 horsepower to drive a really good blower that makes lots of power, which is a realistic number. A lot of people want to throw, it only takes 50 horsepower to drive that blower. No, it doesn't. It takes a lot. It takes a lot more than people think, especially when you start really making power. And so if you know what 100 horsepower or 200 or 300 horsepower electric motor looks like, it's not something little that would fit on the front of a supercharger. Noodles, the Quad 4 had much different intake length manifolds between the low output and the high output versions. That wouldn't surprise me. I think that they probably had different cam timing too. Is there a specific reason to have variable oil pump pressure like on my L86? I think there is. One of the reasons is to improve fuel mileage, because if you're not running lots of oil pump pressure, then you can, that's basically parasitic loss. So you can improve the fuel mileage that way, and I would imagine that that's why they did that. Casey, how much horsepower and torque can a stock 4L80? If anybody can chime in on that, I'm not familiar with the... I saw Weber's have triple power valves for fueling, better than a Holley. I don't know better than one versus the other. I've run both of them. We ran side drafts DCOEs on my Z, and I liked them, and they were fairly tunable. But it would have been much better back then when I was doing it with no acceleration tests or dyno or air fuel meter. I'd have been a lot better off if I would have had the kind of stuff that I have available now. Tim, did you check installed center line on the cams? I did not. We just put them in. I don't know what the intake center line is on the cams because I don't remember having the cam cards. Brian, more torque or horsepower, which is better? Well, they're both the same thing. One is just work and the other one's work over time. And so if we show a torque curve, you're going to have some kind of power curve that's going to go along with it. Mercedes Formula 1 have a large enough electric supercharger. It's part of the MGUK system on their Formula 1 cars. Yeah, on a Formula 1 car. I wonder how much that costs. Braden, what do you think of valve springs that you're using? Do you think it could be running into some kind of valve float on the 212, 221 cam? The thing is with valve float, if we were experiencing valve float, you see that as what I call, when we look at the dyno curve, like a geometric change in a curve. So what happens is it goes up nice and smooth, then it just drops down because it runs out of control, and you have a dramatic change in power. And you can see it's very evident. The other thing is, we wouldn't have valve float at 3,000 RPM or 3,500 RPM. More than likely, if we were going to have valve float, it'd be at some higher engine speed. And the valve springs worked great on the other cam and on the stock cam. I think we had 26.918s when we did this test, and they worked fine for a lot of stuff. Mongrels, did the Ford Explorer 96 5-liter GT have longer intake runners than the Mustang 5-liter? That's a good question. The Explorer has a GT40 style intake manifold. So it's different than the HO intake manifold is on the Mustang. Right now, I think Mark Sanchez is testing a bunch of the different intake manifolds. He's testing the tubular GT40 upper and the Explorer one and the Cobra one, and so he's doing a bunch of those. So it's kind of a nostalgia test, which it'll be awesome to see. OEMs have been experimenting with electric motors to pre-spool our turbocharger to eliminate turbo drag. It would make a lot more sense to do that on a turbo, and especially to do it down low where you're not having to provide a bunch of airflow and therefore load on the motor. So spooling that thing up is a really a good application for a small electric motor. But like I said, to give you an idea, when they run superchargers, like if you run a 671 or an 871 or the stuff that they run for top fuel deals, they don't use an electric motor just to spin those to make sure that they're working. Even Kenny Bell, who has a blower dyno, he doesn't use an electric motor to spin the blowers to test them. They use a 500 horsepower LS motor to drive the blowers, because a lot of those blowers, even like TVSs and Whipples and those things could be 300 horsepower to drive when you max them out. So a 300 horsepower electric motor is really, really big and takes a lot of juice. So it'll dim the city when you are testing that thing if you had electric motors on it. Dean, the ITB system BMW M3 S52 didn't have enough plenum volume around the stub stacks? I don't know what problem that would cause. Cameron, I could use roller cam off of eBay. It's like a 327, 350 horse cam, 221, 221. So the 327, 350 horse cam is the L97, or L79, I mean. 447, 447, 114 for my... Oh, so that's an LS version. I'm thinking old school small block. Is that 6 liter looking at me? I need a real camshaft. That's... Well, a 447 lift, you're not going to be very happy with that camshaft in your LQ4. You should get a different camshaft than that. I thought you were talking about a small block Chevy cam. And even then, that's not going to be a great cam. There are lots better aftermarket cams than that L79 camshaft, although that was Chevrolet's best-selling camshaft for years and years and years. Would you ever try a fuel efficiency test? I've done that a lot, but I don't do it on the engine dyno. We do it on the we do it out on the car, out on the track, out on the street. Five-liter truck intakes are awesome. The upper intake manifold is not great on those. A lot of guys use the lower manifold, and I think it probably was better than the HO version. Been a long time since I tried one of those. We used to run the Celine stuff with that. Cameron, okay, that lift makes more sense. 550 makes more sense than 447. Casey, I saw for sale a rev kit. I don't know that a lot of guys are using that anymore for hydraulic roller cams. Dean, so much of what you've given us over the last year has proven that I had 3 things wrong: LSA, boost control, and independent runner and fuel ejection position and port size. That's a lot of things. I'm happy to help. Brian, how does rocker ratio affect valve lift? Well, and does that mean you can make more or less valve lift depending on the ratio and what I need different push rods? The answer is yes. You do change the lift at the valve with a different ratio rocker, because what you're doing is multiplying it, because you have cam lift, and then the rocker ratio, if it's like on an LS, is 1.7 to 1. The LS7 is 1.8. Small block Chevys could be 1.5. The upgrade is 1.6. And so you just multiply the valve lift by the rocker ratio, and that or multiply the cam lift by the rocker ratio, and that gives you the valve lift. David, in one of your videos, I interpreted that you're saying that K-Tech CNC porting was only of moderate porting. Is that true? The heads that we got from them were not a full CNC deal. So they may have other levels of that, but what we got is their quickie, like it was like a $400 job or something like that, and it was something that was supplied by the guys at Strictly Performance, and it was stock valves and stock valve sizes and all that. Mike, the Ford Racing 303 cam motors always make lower dyno numbers. I don't lower than what? Does Westech have a cam doctor measuring tool there? I think that I remember seeing one a long time ago. We've never used it, and I've never see them use it. I know Brian has one. They use it a lot. Streetcar Chronicles. Hey, Richard, I'm building a 496 big block. I have a set of Edelbrock RPM heads, 118cc chambers. I was thinking 10 to 1 compression, so you're going to have a small dome on that, like 18 to 22 cc's. Hydraulic roller cam, 635, 640, 237, 243 on a 106, so it's going to have a bit of an idle. 650. I don't know that you'll get to 650 on that combination. Summit does have the new Alphabet cams, although I haven't seen any test data on them yet for the Fords. Are there any aftermarket intakes that have active intake runners? I haven't seen any. Usually the control is expensive for that stuff. I thought BBK did a 5-liter one way back. Main Street Muscle. What gains do you typically see with a valve upgrade? Like on a Gen 6 454, is it worth it to upgrade the valve size? I would think that you should do some minor porting before you upgrade the valve size, and then do valve size. Yeah, I ain't no punk. You're having chemo, man. I didn't know. Get better. Dean, we got one guy who got 410 horsepower from his 4.1 liter, 100 horsepower per liter. That's nice. 48 DCOE, 6-barrel. Then we got less than 320 horsepower with ITBs, all due to cam LSA, plenum volume and port size. It lost 90 horsepower. That seems like a lot. Would you test the Summit 303 cam versus the matching Ford? Well, I think we have some of those at Westech still from way back. A, B, and E. A B, and an E, and an F. You could do a Tricklo 5-liter intake or a GT40 intake. We have a GT40 intake. And they talked to me about doing some of those cam tests, so I'm sure I could be able to do that for them. What happens when the head and valves are too big and the power drops? Take a look. I have videos up on big port volume stuff, and it doesn't really hurt too much at wide open throttle. You just don't have enough motor to take advantage of what the head has to offer. Hey Richard, what was your best combo in your 5-liter? What horsepower did it make? What was your best ET? I don't do a lot of drag racing, so I didn't take it to the track. All of my cars were road race cars and top speed cars. So the most power it made probably was just when I put an R trim on it, and it had trick flow high port heads on it. It had that the 274 comp cam. It had some kind of shortened and ported version of a Cobra manifold, I think, on it. And, you know, it was probably only making, with the B trim, it probably was making less than 500 at the tire. When we took the motor out and I ran on the engine dyno, we went way over 600 with it a number of times, and especially when we ran the R trim on it. Cameron, what do you recommend for a half-ton truck? Good torque and power with a good sound. If it's an LS, then I would do a truck Norris cam. I'm glad you have the support group, man. We're all rooting for you. David, would you feel comfortable using LS Caddy racing lifters, or just go with LS7 racing lifters? I think most guys use the LS7 stuff. I'd actually defer to Brian and ask him about the Caddy stuff, because I don't think I've ever used those. Streetcar, what would it take to get 600 to 650 out of this 496? You might get to 600 with that camshaft, but when we were doing stuff that makes 650 or more, we usually have that 300 BR14 camshaft in it, which is like 255, 262, and it's 650 lift, and it's a solid roller and not a hydraulic roller. Not that you couldn't make that with a hydraulic roller of similar specs, but you're going to need a fairly healthy camshaft in it, and we normally do it with a fairly good set of heads, like an Airflow Research head or something. The Edelbrock Performer RPM head is not quite at that level, but and a tunnel ram, like a dual quad Wyand tunnel ram for the big block, or you know, they have Dart makes one and stuff. Those help out the power a lot, but normally we do that with a single plane 454R or something. Question on Holley HP ECM data logging. How does its volumetric efficiency data log accuracy compare with the dyno log brake specific fuel consumption numbers? I don't know. I don't ever remember looking at volumetric efficiency data logging on the Holley, and I don't normally look at brake specific fuel consumption numbers on the dyno unless it's a carbureted motor. The way that the fuel injection is set up, I don't think the brake specific numbers are very accurate, and I don't ever use those for anything anyways. I use a lambda number when we're tuning it. I don't use brake numbers, and honestly don't care how much fuel that it's using. Has anyone done a compressed air supercharger? Yeah, the guys from Compressed Air Supercharging have done it. The guys that used to own NOS have that set up, and Jeff Smith did a really cool story on it for, I think it was probably for Hot Rod. Do you know anyone who's used the PipeMax program to make headers? Is that the one that Burns uses? Joseph, how far can you bore a Gen 4.5.3 safely with a 4-inch stroke? You can go to 3.900 or 3.902 or 3.905 and make it a 383. When should the truck doors cam be out? Oh, the video be out? I don't know. I don't know when I'll get the information. And will it be a 6-liter? It was tested in a 5.3. Is it possible to ball hone a 5.3 block and plop in an internally balanced stroker kit? Yeah, as long as a piston or pistons in that stroker kit are sized for the stock bore. Otherwise, you're going to have to bore it and then hone it. Thank you for all your knowledge. I'm building a 6-liter to put in my car. Your videos have helped me stay tuned and not get lost in my head after serving the military. Thank you for your service. So thank you for what you have to offer, and thank you. Casey, Richard, I hate to say it, but you should put that Atlas in your Fox. That's probably too much. It's probably too long. How much does exhaust size affect horsepower? 2.5 inch versus 3 inch on a 650 horse supercharger small block. I don't think a lot on that power output and that exhaust change size. If you have dual 2.5s, that should work pretty well. So, David, the L7 lifter and the Copo L7 lifter are different. The Copos are made by Johnson. I thought that who makes the factory LS7 lifters then? Because I don't think Delco's not making them anymore, right? I've always laughed at fuel economy. I'm a fuel mileage guy. That's why I had my Chevy Sprint Turbo. That's why I had my Civic VX. But we don't do that on the engine dyno. Trying to determine fuel mileage on an engine dyno, first of all, we wouldn't do that at wide open throttle. The only reason that you would do that is if you were in a racing class like Le Mans or something, and you needed to have that power, and you needed to have that power at the least amount of fuel possible, and that's all good stuff. But that's never what we're doing when I'm dyno testing. We're never trying to do the maximum amount of power on either the lowest octane, which a lot of guys want, or with the least amount of fuel, you know, with the best brake specific number. I'm never trying to do that. We're just trying to get the power. Brent, should 6-liter with 706 heads on a Trek Norse can be a good tow motor? Yeah, it should. How much ignition timing can you get away with without pinging the Cleveland 4V heads on a Windsor? Well, you're going to let us know, probably. The 79 and 80 Mustang had the straight 6. No, I know it'll fit. The straight 6 cylinder would fit in there, but it wouldn't be my choice for that particular one. It would be more likely to go in the Nova than it would be to go in the Mustang. I'm thinking Barra for the Mustang, or maybe, you know, something else, an aluminum something else maybe. Richard, thank you for turning up the transmitting volume. Happy to help. David, I don't know who makes the OEM LS7 lifters, but there's a noticeable price difference between those and the Copo lifters. So Tim says it's not really the length that would stop an Atlas and a Fox. They're really tall, especially with the dippy over the valve cover intake. That's true. It would hurt hood clearance, I'm sure. Can you do a how the dyno works video? Yeah, I can show that. That'd be a good one to do with Steve Brule, since he's the dyno master. Yeah, a Barrett Mustang would be cool, and it would be a lot more unique, obviously, than an LS Mustang. You always put it in your Z car. Again, it is going to be really, really tall, I think, compared to the L24, L26, or L28. Yep, Stevie is Mr. Dyno. He's the guy that he is. An interview with Steve Brule would be good to talk about the dyno. So what else you guys got for me? What did we go over on the... I have all my notes here. I've got some more things coming up for sale as well. Got a couple more used camshafts. Those will be coming up. Really? The Kent 1.6 liter cylinder head is $2,500 prep for assembly? On my 6 liter with 719 heads. What is a 719 head? The change in the 243 heads, does the stock intake work? As long as it's a cathedral port head, is a 719 like an iron head? Is that a real early one or something? Yes, an RB in the Z, Casey, would definitely be the way to go. Is there future plans to add an intercooler to the GL8s? Yes. I actually want to put a whole T2 assembly in there and get it smog certified in California, so that it's a GLHS swap, if you will, into this earlier car. And I think it would be fairly easy, and I think it could be easily emission certified. That way, I don't want to run around without an intercooler. What do you think the difference would be between E85 and gasoline with nitrous in regards to charge cooling? Use the same nitrous jet, only change the fuel jet. I don't think you're putting enough fuel in there to see a dramatic change in charge cooling. Actually, when we did the nitrous test, like when we did the turbo deal and we ran nitrous, and we were running E85 with the nitrous, you still only saw about a 30-degree change in charge temperature, because there's just not enough nitrous and fuel in relation to how much hot air you have. It just doesn't do very much cooling because there's not enough of it there. So I don't think you'd see a big change there. Can we address intake reversion? Carb up the 4-barrel on a 450. I don't know what your question is. You're gonna have to rewrite that. Camshaft overlap versus back pressure. Does overlap or no overlap drastically affect power in an engine with, say, 1.5 psi of back pressure? Any turbo application is always going to have back pressure, even if it's 1-to-1. But you almost always, and you won't have usually more back pressure down low. you'll, at least our data logging has shown that the back pressure is a rising curve. And so at some point, usually it crosses over what the boost pressure is, especially if your boost pressure is nice and flat and steady, you have a rising back pressure curve. And so you only have more back pressure at some RPM. You shouldn't worry about overlap with the turbo motor, because having this thought that turbo camshaft should not have any overlap is nonsense. Pick your camshaft so that it makes the power curve that you want, and then add boost, and don't worry about the overlap. It's just going to work fine. Have you done any testing on the BTR cathedral port intake? Yeah, way back I did some, and it's a short runner manifold designed for really high RPM. So if that's what kind of motor you're building, that's what you should use. If you're running a 7,000 RPM or less motor, that's not the right intake for you. Has anyone ever gone from a positive displacement blower into the turbo? I don't know why you would do that. Do you plan to test the new comp LST cams on an NA 6-liter? I have LST cam tests up on the dyno, or videos up already. I have run a couple of those cams. One bad AMX, do you have everything to do the T2 swap? I do not. What I need really are the, I think I have an intercooler. I need the air intake and tube assemblies for the T2 swap. Intake reversing sooting in a reverse backfiring pattern in a racing 454. Camshaft related question, what's the tightest LSA you've ever tested on the dyno? For me, on my stuff that I've run, I think it's only like 106 or something like that. I think that other people have run cams when I've been there on their motors, but they're motors that were just put together. They didn't do a test one versus another one, but they've run tighter stuff than that, down around 100, I think, but I've never run anything like that. What do you think about the 7.3-liter Ford crate motors and what they have to offer? Have you seen all the testing that Brian Wolf has done? And I have. I talked to Evan not long ago. I was talking to him about how cool the wagon was and told him I wanted to come back and see he and Brian and do some videos on that. That would be cool. Snafu, what turbine size would you suggest for a Buick 455 with a Comp 268 cam, performer intake, stock compression of a VSR 7875 T4 with a smaller housing? What is the hot side on that one? Honestly, I think it's going to work fairly well, actually. I think you should try it, and I don't think you're not going to be, I don't think you're going to probably be maxing that thing out. You're not going to be trying to make 1,000 horsepower with that thing, right? I mean, I don't think you would be able to with that turbo on that motor, but you're not going to swap in a T2 motor? Yeah, I would like to. I have two motors right now. I'd like to actually get a real 87 T2 motor or an 86 that I could swap in there. That would be ideal. That would be the ideal situation. Right now, I have the 84 2.2, and I also have the later common block 2.5. How long until the bear and the variable intake? I don't know when the bear is going to run. What's the most power you've seen on a 5.7 aluminum block, naturally aspirated? I think we've been in the 600 horsepower range with something I've put together. I don't know about racing guys, what they're doing. Mike, thumbs up. Nice. Oh yeah, if you're only looking at 600 horsepower, you're fine on that turbo. Reversion is fuel standoff. We're familiar with that. You should have seen the standoff on the really long Sonic Ram intake manifold that they had on the Dodge with the two carburetors outboard of the motor, two Carters I think that they were running. And as they were running the thing, they loaded it all the way down to 1800 RPM because that's where they found the torque peak was. Because this was a stroker version of a 440, and then they had that Sonic Ram intake manifold on there, which was awesome for Westech. But you could see the fuel standoff above the carburetors, and I've seen that occasionally on the chassis dyno as well. You can see it during the RPM range. The fuel standoff will come above the carburetor, and then it will come back down. It's actually fairly cool, and it still works. I'm on the wrong live feed for my four-banger, hoping to get at least 325 to 350, and the rest is from the car being 2280 pounds. You're in the right place. I've written many books on four-cylinder stuff. I've done lots of Honda stuff, lots of Ford Focus stuff. So I'm an engine guy, not just a V8 guy. Hi, Richard. Just wondering if you ever dyno the straight 5, seeing the numbers you've gotten out of the 4.2. Straight 6. I haven't yet. I would like to. I'd like to do the 5 and the 4-cylinder version. Blue, do you consider the 228 excuse me, TSP cam small in the 5.7 aluminum block with 243 heads and LS6 intake manifold? I don't know what 228 TSP is, but if it's 228 on the intake at 50, that's a decent size cam. It's not as much as you can put in there, but it's still pretty good size. Yeah, Snafu, you just stay with the 96 and it'll be really responsive because you have a lot more turbo than you need there. So in my opinion, you're going to want the smaller one for driving on the street. Yeah, one bad AMX. I know mine has one computer, so it has already the right style ECU for the. I mean, mine has two. Mine has one in the engine compartment and then one inside the car. So it's already set up for that. Have you ever made any real power with a Cyclone motor? I've never run one of those on the engine dyno. Have you seen any cases of high RPM reversion? Sooting back up a Holly 4500 atop a 454 big block with a comp through. All of that is very, very specific, so I've never run the specific combination that you're talking about. If you're seeing reversion, it could be natural in what's happening, but it also could be valve float, which can cause that also. Blue, what cam can I swap it for that would show significant gains? Take a look at the videos I have up. It will give you an idea. I tested the Sloppy Stage 2 cam, which is a 228 cam, 228, 230. And then we did like the 231, 247 comp 469 cam. And you'll see the power gains from that, and that should give you a fairly good idea. Okay, guys, I've got to get going. Thank you guys all for showing up. And tomorrow I should have another video coming out on the testing that we did on the 5.7L Ls1. Hopefully you guys are all staying safe out there. I got my booster today. So, yeah, or yesterday I got it. That's right. So, I'm trying to be tough. No, it all worked out good. But so everybody be safe out there, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.